This is the Writers Podcast, a Writers After Dark radio production, bringing you the best in writing advice, news, trends, and interviews. Hosted by award-winning authors S.K. Anthony and Raymond Esposito.
Hi, and welcome to the Writers Podcast. I'm Raymond Esposito.
And I'm S.K. Anthony.
And for our first episode, we're going to be discussing the 5 most common mistakes that first-time authors make.
Yes, but because you and I are both self-published authors, going to discuss a little more about those mistakes that apply to first-time self-published authors, right?
Yeah, I made 4.5 of the 5 mistakes with my first novel. I went back and corrected them.
You did go back and correct it. I think you have wonderful products out there right now. I think what it is just because it's your first time, it doesn't mean that it's okay to make these mistakes. All you really need, are careful planning, some common sense, and, really do some research.
Yeah, but I also think, on the other hand, if you already have a book out and you hear some of these things, and you're like, uh-oh, I did that, it's not the end of the world. That's the great thing about self-publishing is, pull the work back in, correct it, and put it back out there. It's not like you've already printed 10,000 copies of that book and you can't make the changes.
Right. And the good thing about that is that you get to learn through experience. And believe me, that's going to stick with you.
Oh, I'll never make these mistakes again. So let's start with the first one, which is know your genre.
Yes.
Whatever you choose to write in, whatever you're, hopefully it's the genre that you love. But whatever it is, it comes with a history. There are thousands of books in that genre that came before you. And while your job as an author isn't to write exactly what everyone else wrote, you should understand the reader's expectations. There's certain things in those books they expect to see.
Right. So genres exist for a reason, right? And they kind of help make a connection between you and the reader. By knowing the genre, you're going to fulfill those key points that they expect in that genre. By the more you read, the more you'll know what's missing, how to make this your own, and how to own it. So you're offering something different on your perspective in a genre they're used to.
Yeah, and on the other side, where I did do my research was I looked at what is it that readers often complain about in the genre. So, and I've seen some, not in my particular writing genre, but in things like spy novels, somebody had a spy who didn't know the difference between a revolver and a semi-automatic. That kind of little mistake is death. In my first series, which is on zombies, I had seen things like people complained about the never-ending bullets or the fact that these people, it never talked about where they got their food and water. So just knowing and seeing those complaints, it didn't take me a lot to add a couple of sentences just to explain, where those kind of supplies came from.
Talking about that, it reminds me specifically when you're looking at all these other books that are out there that match what you write, go ahead and also read the reviews. You can learn a lot from those reviews
Absolutely.
as to what was missing. That's one of those things that really make a difference.
I guess the word is authenticity, right? If you're going to write in writing in the genre, you have to be the sort of your own master of your own book, but understanding the stuff that goes into it that makes it great makes you authentic.
Yeah, writing for a specific genre is not that you're writing a formula. You're just making sure that loyal readership gets what they're expecting, and then more, because you're going to add your own.
Right. If this is something that you love and you grew up, like for me, I grew up reading horror, Stephen King, Dean Koontz, Jack Ketchum, all of those folks. So I studied who I considered to be the masters. I didn't, I don't plagiarize their work. I put my own style on it, but I understood how they did it. And I think that's the best advice. Knowing your genre is about reading up on the people that you respect who write in that genre. I'm surprised, and we ran into someone, we won't name names, but you and I ran into somebody who was writing a book, and the question was, have you, what do you like? What have you read? What's some of your favorite books? I don't remember the specific question, but her answer basically was, I don't read. I'm not a reader. I never was a reader.
Yes, and you and I both were very shocked because, we both feel like if you're going to write, how do you find love for writing if you don't read? I can't comprehend that. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
at all.
I would, how do you make a movie if you've never watched a movie? So I think with self-publishing, you don't have to be, you don't have to have an MFA in English literature or creative writing, but you certainly should understand the world that you're getting into. And I think one of the best ways to start to understand how your writing measures up is to avoid the second mistake.
Yes, which is getting family critiques. I kind of had that. I didn't do it specifically to get. I gave my manuscript to my mom, the first one, and it wasn't that.
I almost want to ring the violation alarm. Warning, warning.
I wanted her. I know. I knew that it was going to be that. I just had some questions, some specific questions as to where I wanted my main character's arc to go, and I wanted to know if it would work. But I wanted a second opinion on it. But I gave it to her, and I knew that it was horrible in that state, and I warned her. But my mommy dearest, she loved it because, that's how they see it. The people who love you, they're predisposed to loving what you write, or they're not going to tell you anything negative because they don't want to hurt your feelings.
Right. And I mean, in general, sure, my wife is my first listener to my books and, chapter and verse. And I don't know that she's ever actually heard a completed one. And of course, the reaction is good, but I don't expect a critique from her. I mean, I expect if I watch her yawning or she's losing interest, I've got a problem. But that's not my go-to person for, okay, now let's get down to the business of critiquing it.
Right, exactly. Family, friends, spouses, they're really not the best for you to test your story against the outside world. These readers know their genre. They notice all type of inconsistencies. They're not going to give you that professional feedback that, you'll get from your peers or from professional content editors, beta readers, critique partners, what have you.
Researchers Patterson and Kim had done some studies on lies. They were long-term studies. And although these are kind of lies of omission, family being nice and not telling you the truth, maybe they can't hear the truth, maybe they don't know anything about writing. But what the studies by Patterson and Kim found was the closer our relationship is to someone, spouse, children, boyfriend, girlfriend, parent, the more lies, and especially lies of omission, or what they call lies for others, being nice, not telling someone, well, that's really terrible. The frequency increases. Strangers are more honest with you than loved ones are. And it's all well-intentioned. And like I said, I think it's fine to get that feedback, but the business of the critique has to come from somebody who knows what they're doing.
I'm torn between wondering, is that sad that they lied to the they care more the most, or is it just much love they have to protect?
Let me give you the bright spot in it. Specifically in the study, people who were in a relationship, a romantic relationship under 8 months, they lied at a rate of 1 every 3 interactions. So
they do?
Yeah, 1 every 3 interactions. So a third of all the conversations committed had some kind of lie of commission or omission. The good news is once you get married, the rate goes to 1 in 10. So, we're less likely as we get to know someone as we get into marriage and we get to know someone, we do lie less. In the same study, they asked men, of all the lies you tell, how many of them does your wife catch you in? And the men reported that their wives catch them in about 10% of those lies. They asked the wives the same question, and they said about 80% of the time they know their husband is lying, and it's just not worth.
Right.
Because it's all, in marriage, it's all little things.
I was about to say that. I think we just let it go. We have our own lives, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the classic example is if my wife asks me, if she puts on some outfit and she asks, does that make me look fat? I am never going to say yes to that question. I will go around that. I don't care if it makes her look fat. I'll make another suggestion.
She never looked fat, actually. He has a hot wife.
Thank you.
Sometimes if you ask them to do these feedback reading for you, there might be confusion if they don't understand, the genre and any other elements of writing. So you and I agree that every writer should get a beta reader, right? And it's a beta reader, a content editor, feedback from other writers. And this is not a reflection of you being a bad writer. It's just really the professional way to go.
It is. And that's really can be, that can be a low-cost service. And you can even find people who, you can have a critique partner who will trade you reading your book for reading theirs.
That's what I do, yes. I have several friends, author friends, who I read their work, they read mine. We help each other with consistencies, learning how to improve your structure. They let you know things that work, that don't work. And eventually, if you stick to sort of the same group, you learn each other's style. So it kind of makes it easier for you to give that. But I have different groups. Like I have people who don't read or write what I write. I have people who do. So I have like a different variation of them.
All right, so you've got all these variations going on. I only use one beta reader. Am I shortchanging myself? Do you think the person's good enough? I mean, is that good enough to be using just this one?
But you have a professional content editor.
I am banking my entire career on this one person. I hope she knows what she's doing.
This person is very picky, isn't she?
Yeah, she is. Well, you know what? I've won enough awards letting this person beta read and actually developmentally edit my books that it seems like, it's okay.
Yes.
And if you guys haven't figured out the mystery, that is SK, who does all of my developmental edits.
You're welcome.
Unlike her, I don't shop around.
So basically,
I'm not shopping my book around to 100 different people. It's you. If you're not good at it, well, I guess
because you don't read mine, man. Yeah. So we all have our.
You know what it is? I
don't.
I don't understand. If you would switch from urban fantasy to bourbon fantasy, I could probably help you out with the story.
If I switched to bourbon fantasy, I would have so much more fun too.
Yeah, we all would.
Now, writing is fun regardless. You know what's not fun? Editing. Self-editing specifically. It's like one of those things. Yeah. That's actually our third point here.
Because self-editing is like taking out your own appendix.
It is.
It's just not a good idea. It's messy. People die.
Yes. And in both cases, quality really matters.
Yeah, it does. And I have heard, and listen, again, I'm not like sitting here in judgment and up on some, high pedestal saying, I haven't done it, because in my first book, the first book that went out, it was self-edited. It had, I had a friend also look at it, and she was pretty good at editing, and it was an absolute train wreck.
That wasn't me.
No, it was a train wreck from an industry standpoint. The average person who read it, like my parents, like, my spouse, like my kids, like they didn't care about the typos. They never mentioned them. But right. You put that out on the market and you will get slayed. And the issue is always the same.
That is absolutely going to haunt you forever, because those reviews stay there unless you physically remove the book. But Amazon, Barnes & Noble, they all have those policies. They don't really remove it because you didn't like a review. So, even if you think you can't afford an editor, listen, can you afford to produce a book full of errors? I don't think so. And if you find that you're self-publishing your book and that it's too expensive for you to pay an editor, maybe that's not for you. Maybe what you have to do is send out queries and have a publisher pick up all those expenses for you.
Yeah, no, that is a good point. I understand that editing a book can cost somewhere between $500 and $1,000. That's $10 or $20 a week. So it may be something where it takes you that extra. I think that the problem or the mistake that people make, and it was a mistake that I made, was we think of self-publishing as this is something that fulfills me. It's here and now. I can write it. I can publish it. I don't have to wait for a contract. And that's all very true, but you do have to take the time. You can't effectively. And I've heard people say, I'm good at it. I have a friend who's good at it. I'm telling you, if it's not your thing, if you're not a professional, if you are a professional editor, you know not to edit your own work.
Exactly. And, piggybacking on that, self-publishing is a business, right? You have to treat it like a business if you want to succeed in it. Mm-hmm. You know the skills that you have. You know what you're capable of doing. You can write it. You can revise it. You can't do the cover yourself unless you're a graphic designer, right? You can't edit it yourself, even if you're an editor, because there is like there's a commercial standard, right, for editing quality, which is about 90% of that. And if an editor catches that 90% of errors in your manuscript, for publishers, you did a good job. So imagine if you did it on your own, and this is a professional editor we're talking about.
Yeah, it's not a business of perfection, but it is a business of professionalism. The thing that works against you, and it's not really a question of intelligence, it's not a question of whether you have memorized the Chicago Manual of Style. It's when it's your own work. The brain works in a very efficient way. Your brain looks at patterns and schemas. People don't realize that most of the things in your peripheral that you're seeing right now while you're listening to this podcast, those are images of a place. If you've been in that place before, if it's a room, if you're on a walk, those images are not actual. Those are things your brain is putting up. It's going back to its schemas and patterns. So when you misspell a word, but you know what the word's supposed to be, that's the word you see.
That's how you see it. We're just too close to notice any of the mistakes. I can't tell you the amount of times I add off in a sentence and the off is not there.
Mm-hmm.
But I know it's supposed to be there, so I, see it.
Right. That's there's a science behind why you can't self-edit. As a matter of fact, there's the famous study, the Cambridge study, which shows that as long as the first letter and the last letter is correct in the word you mean to spell, and there's the right number of letters in between, your brain will figure out from the context what the word is supposed to be. So you can imagine in your own work, if money is the reason, then find a way to get around that, whether it's, like you said, going to a traditional publisher or just waiting and saving up the money.
Yeah, it's an investment. And at the same time, as we're talking about at least saving the money for it or going that other route, along with that comes, your book cover. If you have a poor book cover, that's going to reflect the work inside. And for me, I'm a book cover junkie. I usually pick up a book based on the cover, then I read the blurb, and then I go from there. But I honestly, I really think that your cover is your first page. It's the first page of your story. So why wouldn't you want to attract your reader based on that? It sets up the setting for them. It lets them know what the genre is. And if it grabs their interest and it's good quality, you have a fan. You have a reader there.
I agree. You can't judge a book by its cover. Readers absolutely do. And you certainly can judge the professionalism of a book by its cover. And one thing that's often forgotten about when doing the cover design, whether you're using digital imagery, or you're actually hiring an illustrator, is also don't forget about the fonts. Fancy, and I did this, fancy, crazy fonts, unique ways of doing it. Looks great, might look great on your PC or your Mac, but think about how that looks in the thumbnail, and simple is certainly better. It's got to be clear, readable, and it's got to be professional. Nice. I spend about $300 on a book cover. It's illustrated. I'm fortunate. I have someone I've been working with for years. You go with the digital covers. What are the price ranges that a person should expect to see for a cover? A digital one with an image.
There's different. Because if you go for a pre-made, you could get anywhere between 25, 50, 100. It really depends. The range is so wide. Now you have to be careful. If you pay,
a pre-made means you get to know, you make no changes to it. They simply throw your author
title. They put the title in it, right? Okay. There's a lot of them who just. But these images, which is what I was gonna say, is you can see it on any other book cover, right? Sometimes they will be repeated. I really wanted to work with this professional cover designer that I love her work. It's Regina Wamba of May I Design. I wanted to work with her for a long time because she's so professional. The prices were a little up there. And I came across this pre-made, which fit exactly what I wanted. And I just bought it for $25. I thought, okay, that's not a big deal. And maybe a week later, I saw another book. My book wasn't even ready. I saw another book that had the same cover, and of course I was like, all right, that's my sign. Regina, I'm coming to you. And I absolutely love my covers, right? Because that's what it is. Professional designers, cover designers, they know what's eye-catching for your genre.
Sure.
They know what works. They understand the colors, the fonts, like you were saying, the resolutions, because that's a tricky one, the dimensions, the alignments. And you know what? They're accountable for their work.
Well, I think the whole point is what you shouldn't be doing is, if you're not an actual graphic designer, unlike being, although I'll say you can never be a self-editor, if you are a graphic designer, you can make your own book covers.
Absolutely.
But short of that, if you're not, you shouldn't just buy some internet program and say, I'm going to throw some images and some fonts on this and that'll be good enough, because you're not doing yourself a favor.
Along with that, if there's something that stays true, is that no matter what the cover looks like, it has to be the right one, right? And if money is the issue when it comes to covers, like Raymond said, you could try to learn it on your own. You could just make sure that the quality is there. But you can also find cover designers for any budget out there, right? You can go to Fiverr, you can go to the Beyond Art. You can find new up-and-coming artists to help you with your book cover.
Who would love to have it in their portfolio. And one other thing is, if you're absolutely going to do it on your own and you're just like, all right, I'm going to make this, I can do this, I'm going to make the book cover on my own, I'm going to save myself some money, you can go into places like Goodreads and you can get people's opinion. And as long as you're willing to take the possibility of a brutal assault, but you can get opinions on. I did it,
especially in
although I had
Goodreads.
an illustrator on my second book. I had I didn't know if I liked it in greenish or if I liked it in bluish, right? So I just went on to Goodreads and I asked people, can you tell me what you liked? And I did the same thing on Facebook, and that's how I made the decision. So there's a lot of ways around the possibility of putting out a bad book cover, but I think it's like everything else. Get partners, get
It's so
honest
funny
opinions.
because I'm so private, and like I have one book cover. I always have my book covers ahead of time, and I don't share them until like I'm closer to
The reveal.
I'm closer to yeah, to publishing my book, because when you do this, it's part of the promotion, right?
I know. I'm
That's one of
terrible at
those mistakes you
promotion.
make too. It's part of the promotion that you do a cover reveal little while before you do the publishing, and you get the interest going. It goes around and it helps you. But what I do when I'm confused, when I'm not sure what I'm which cover, this one or that one, I annoy the hell out of my friends. Raymond,
Yeah.
how many times did we go over chaotic?
Until the point where I didn't want to give you advice anymore.
Yeah, but it helps me. I help you.
Yeah. Well, listen, one of the things that's not on our list, but I am a marketing professional. I run a marketing company, and I am the worst at promoting my own books. I can tell you how to do it, but things like cover reveal, we're talking about that, and like when blog tours, I don't do any of those things, which is terrible. But what I do know is I do know about price. I do know about the market and the price sensitivity. And this mistake, I think, is less common now than it was, say, 5 years ago. But it's still something that can really mess up
It can
your
hurt
launch.
you.
Yeah, it can hurt you.
It can really hurt you.
There are, for independent authors, we are not traditionally published authors where a big publishing house sets the price at $24.99 for the book or whatever. We are independent authors. There are certain expectations. And if you choose the wrong price, you can either hurt your sales or you could devalue your book. So you want to do some research because you don't want to be over, you don't want to be under, and we'll talk about free in a minute. As you look at the research, the most popular price point for a ebook is $2.99. Is there reasons to go higher? Meredith Wild, who's a best-selling megastar now in romance, has started her own publishing company. She's picking up other independent authors, and she's actually driving their prices higher, $4.99, $5.99. She understands her market. She knows what it'll bear. For most of us,
that's kind of what the small presses are doing too, right? So, which go along a little bit closer to us self-publishers. The small prices do that, and that is pretty much their price point, $4.99, $5.99. It's really tricky, but if you're doing it yourself, you don't want people to think that you're not proud of your work, that it doesn't cost that much, it's not worth it. But then you also want to entice them to say, you know what, I could invest $3 in this, $2 in this. On that end, having promotions is okay. It's okay to have free promotions. I actually tagged Raymond into doing some free promotions. How did that work out for you?
it worked out really well. I'm not a fan of free, as you know, because of something called anchoring. Once people see something for free, they're always remiss to ever go back and pay any money for it. So I wasn't really a fan of it, but because of the Kindle Select program and their promotional ability, and I saw the Unlimited. I saw how successful, and I was a little jealous because you did your weekend giveaway.
I only convinced you because of that.
Yeah, I know.
I had 3 days straight of like number one.
Yeah, and that drove me a little crazy. And so you talked me into it, and I did 2 books. I did one in my 3-book series, and I did my standalone book. And it drove them to, a bestseller status.
Buying your other book, too.
Yeah, bought my other books.
You paid full price for your other books.
I saw recurring sales after that. Well after that promotion, people were actually buying the book. People were doing page reads. So for me, it was successful both from a status, ego standpoint of bestseller to also making, I had one of my best months on Kindle Unlimited because of that promotion.
He didn't give me half of his royalties. I don't understand.
Yes, I did. You didn't get that check?
Must still be lost in the mail.
Oh, well. But one of the things with the pricing, going over and thinking your book might be, and your book is probably worth more than $2.99. I mean, that's kind of a sad number that we're stuck with.
Yes, when you think of all that time you put in, all that work, all that effort, sweat, tears, and frustration, and everything else, and the money you invested too, definitely costs more than
Right.
$2.99.
But you can't. Traditional publishers who are putting out best-selling, renowned authors are charging $12.99 to $14.99 for ebooks. We, as independent authors, we just can't start there. Maybe we should try it, but
Exactly.
one of the things you're definitely seeing is when you look at the actual numbers, their volume of their ebooks is down,
Yes.
but their total revenue is the same, and that's only because people are buying less of these books, but they're costing more to actually do. Now, $12.99 to $14.99 is the perfect price point if you're doing a print copy, which I believe you should. That's your sweet spot, but that's also driven by page count. If you write more than a 300-page book, even on CreateSpace, it's going to be hard for you to charge. If it's over
Less
that
than
$300,
$12
yeah,
or something.
it's going to start. If you get up to $19, $20 would have to be your cost. You should split that into two books.
Yes, I agree. Going back to what you said about maybe we should be charging as much as the other traditional publishers are charging. The problem is there's so many authors who stick to the $2.99, and readers these days they're more budget conscious, right? So they're not going to go ahead and look at our book when they can find something that they can afford.
And if you're in the romance genre, I will say that if you're priced over $2.99 and you're not someone like Meredith Wild, it's probably death to your book, and you should stick to. Now, one of the interesting things, and Mark Coker at Smashwords had run a study for a couple years in a row, and I really liked his numbers. It was interesting to find that $2.99 was a great number. Free obviously is a great number. 99 cents worked. People did not buy $1.99. $1.99 turned out to be you were better to go with $5.99 than you were $1.99. There's something about the psychology of that readers don't like.
It doesn't sound inviting for some reason. For me personally, I don't like. Even I would cringe at the idea of thinking I'm going to price my book at $1.99. Like, I have no trouble trying a week at 99 cents, but not at $1.99. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I don't have.
That's how I feel about the 99 cent point. I can't make my book 99 cents. I'd rather do free than 99 cents. It seems almost humiliating to take $1 from my book. I'd rather, keep the change. Just keep
if it kind of helps, if you're doing a promotion and it's specific, to
not judging.
Judge your audience and everything, then it's a good idea. Don't listen to Raymond.
Yeah, I'm speaking personally that for me,
right.
I don't know. I couldn't do it. But then again, I didn't think I could do the free until you talked me into it, and it turned out to be successful. So
because here's the thing, you get people that buy the 99 cents. They like it, they love it. By the time they're done reading it and they tell their friends about it, your book is back to the regular price, and you'll probably get at least one more sale out of it. So that's kind of a new sale that you wouldn't have made otherwise.
I guess the final warning is there's a lot of great ways to price your book normally, $2.99, and then do the things we talked about. You can run specials, you can run discounts, you can run promotions, and get it out there. But everyone is different. Don't try I'm going to make my ebook $12.99 and then say it's on sale for $2.99 because nobody, that's disingenuous to the readers.
Go with the crowd first, and then go ahead and test the different price ranges and see what works for you. Everyone is different.
As we opened with, all of these mistakes are not the end of the world, but I think the most important thing to remember as a self-published author is writing a book is the same as any other profession. We have to study both the craft and the business of the craft to excel. And the more that we know about both, the greater the chances for success.
And we want to leave you with this quote by Scott Adams: "Creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes. Art is knowing which ones to keep."
So thanks for listening.
And we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the Writers Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. For more articles, news and advice, visit our website, writersafterdark.net, or follow us on Facebook and Twitter. The Writers Podcast is a Writers After Dark radio production. Executive producers SK Anthony and Raymond Esposito. Copyright 2017.